name's Oliver Markley. I'm a retired professor of studies of the future. And what we're going to talk about tonight really needs to start with some fundamental concepts about what imaginal visioning is all about and what prophetic foresight is about. So here you see a cornucopia, the corn of plenty that is celebrated at Thanksgiving time. You see a pool table. Billiard ball causality and cornucopia causality. Two different ways of doing things and of dealing with information that I think need to be integrated together to have a kind of a balanced social activism if we're going to be able to get to wise futures. So what are these about? Well, billiard ball causality is like the things you learn about in physics. F equals ma. You hit one ball, it hits the other ball. You control things that way. Cornucopia causality is quite something else again. It's a kind of a folk symbol. Look at how it's constructed. It's a spiral that starts from an infinitesimally small point and it spirals down until the goodies come out in time and space. Basically, it's a symbol for a spiral vortex. And then where it comes from, there are various theories. David Bohm, the physicist, speaks of the implicate domain that flows out into the explicate domain. Rupert Sheldrake speaks of morphogenesis. Erwin Laszlo and others speak of this region as being the akashic level. There's earth, fire, water, air, and ether. And the ether is the akasha is a Sanskrit word that basically means knowledge in the ether. And so the idea of using this symbol for cornucopia causality has to do with the ways in which we need to have, if you will, left-headed and right-headed sources of information for foresight. Where cornucopia causality is passive volition, it's receptive as opposed to being expressive, and it's willing as opposed to willful, yin as opposed to yang. So what's this about expressive versus receptive? If you'll do a little experiment with me, I'll be able to make it clear. Close your eyes for a moment, if you will, because I want to do a little exercise with you. I'd like you to remember when you were a child in grade school, maybe it's the summertime, you decide you're going to do a lemonade stand with one of your friends. So you're putting the stand together, you've got some lemons, you're cutting them up, and you dare each other to actually bite into the lemon, not only the juice but the rind and all. As you imagine doing that, what happens for you? Did you maybe salivate just a little bit? Did you have kind of an experience of sourness? Well, imagine biting into the lemon. That's expressive. That's what I like to call imaginative visualization. Whereas experiencing the sense of tartness and celebration is receptive, imaginal visioning. So here we are then, billiard ball causality, imaginative visualizing, whereas the cornucopia causality, receptive, imaginal visioning. Rational thinking as opposed to intuitive feeling, experiencing. Conventional foresight versus prophetic foresight. And the symbol of the tilde here is as opposed to being versus, it's a yin-yang kind of thing of synchronistically fitting together. So they both need to fit together in order to have integral activism, it seems to me. And what I'm proposing and what I'm writing about in my journal article then is that activists as well as futurists can be integrating both of these sides of things. So prophetic foresight, what do we mean by prophetic foresight? A very loose definition is proactive knowledge based on supra-mental ways of knowing in the visioning of wise futures and ways to manifest them. Supramental then is a more understandable term than cornucopia. But supramental, the reason I use the cornucopia imagery is it helps people get a sense of this extra kind of thing that you do when you meditate or when you relax in a guided imagery visioning session. The picture, by the way, is somebody I found on the internet when I was doing a Google image search. Somebody who's a professor, PhD in economics, teaches meditation, teaches economics, puts the two together, and I thought it was just a really nice image to put both of these together. So what can you do with this kind of thing? Here you see one of the images that I've used in my recent journal articles. I don't have time to take it all out, but basically you're familiar with the whole idea from Toffler's third wave of the major eras of human history: nomadic, agricultural, industrial, information. In 1995, I got commissioned to do a position paper for NASA on the long-range future of spaceship Earth. Well, to do it, I used some of the Imaginal visioning tools that I'll be talking about in the next slide, one of them being something called mental time travel, where you actually enter imaginal space and you fly into one and another different future. And what I saw was where we overtake the carrying capacity of ecology, where there could be a tipping point downward, and then hopefully there might be a recovery into a sustainability era. And I actually saw a curve very much like that. What I didn't see until just a couple years ago, which was actually what brought me out of retirement and into writing journal articles again, was the idea that this tipping point could well be between 2012 and 2020, 2028, somewhere in there. Certainly within the next 10 to 15 years, and various people think it may well be by 2015. So what are some processes through which to do this imaginal visioning? One of my favorites is called mental time travel. It's where you basically get into a relaxed state and you focus. Remember, we talked about imagination being expressive. You focus and you set your intention to travel through different futures one at a time. Basically, you see what you become aware of as you travel through this future. Experience in future generations is a very structured exercise. It's particularly good for school children, where you start at 10,000 BC in the nomadic era, and you go up section by section until you move through the present into the future. It could be short term, then long term, then very long term. And when you get there, then you ask yourself, given what you're experiencing, what do future generations need from us now? A very structured way of doing mental time travel. And then transformative revisioning is a special imaginal process that I developed because when I taught these kinds of things in my graduate Visionary Futures class, students were getting so upset by what they were experiencing in the future that I needed a little bit of self-therapy. So this transformative revisioning process is where you take an image of what you're not very comfortable with and you treat it as a projection, a mental projection, if you will, as a depth psychologist might say. And then you draw the energy from the imaginal level, your higher conscious supramental level, and use it to transform that image into the highest level that is appropriate for you at this time. Then you take that, you incorporate that, it kind of re-imprints your whole system in a more positive way, which is symbolized by this hope image. So with that, if you would be willing to close your eyes again, I'd like you to do another little exercise. Just relax. Pay attention to your body. Feel all the things you're aware of. You can feel your body on the chair. You can feel the clothes on your body. Just being aware of all your senses. Be aware of the food that you've eaten and what it feels like in your stomach. And as you imagine that you could be more relaxed, Imagine that you just somehow were transported to the year 2020, and in that year you had developed these capacities that we're talking about. Imagine that a transformative reformation of civilization is underway, in which access to higher levels of consciousness is becoming a common value and skill, and that you in fact have those skills. You've done that work. You have all of those. So without any effort whatsoever, just imagine you could see and feel like what this civilization is like to live in. And what's trending, what's next for this civilization. What images come in first? Come back when you're ready. I'll wait till everybody's back and has their eyes open. Okay, so that's just a little taste. The three processes that you see, that you can read about each of them, the mental time travel and the experiencing the needs of future generations, have a complete script. So that if you have somebody who's decent at facilitation, they read it slowly with good pacing, but you can do each of these. The transformative revisioning, I'm going to have be the first of a whole set of imaginal visioning tools that I'm wanting to now bring to market after I'm done writing all my journal articles about the scary future and what to do, how to get resilience and like that. So before ending, I just want to stop with this picture here that I found when I was just looking for some pictures of optimism. And this came up, and I think it's just a wonderful image of a child, right facing the light of the imaginal space. And the word hope, because when we certainly need hope in order to pursue, and we all know how the images we have tend to manifest in our reality. So to have hope is absolutely an optimism. There's a lot of good research now from the positive psychology movement that optimistic people do better. Happy people do better. But when you're wanting to do valid futures research, things like hope can get in your way. So one of the articles that I have not published on, but I've always used to do it in my futures classes, and I will be publishing on it, it's a hopes, fears, and expectations exercise in which you first of all get in touch with what are your main hopes for the future. You write them down. Then you put them in a imaginal airtight space so that it's out of your psyche. You get in touch with your fears. What do you fear for the future? Write them down. Close them up, get them off so that they're not going to bias your perceptions as you look to the future. Then you look at your expectations and you write those down, you put those away, and then you do a mental time travel separate from all of those, and I assure you that it's a very different experience. So hope is truly important, and I hope that we all have a wonderful future ahead. With this, I'll hand out the handouts, because I didn't want you to see the color of the lemon until you had already done the exercise. So here basically are the 4 journal articles that have to do with this work. Thank you very much.